So then we will start now with our first presentation from the Grass Company. So the Grass Company is a Nairobi-based consumer collaboration agency that helps organizations design people-centered strategies through research, insights, and innovation. Focusing on youth, women, and base of the pyramid markets, it links data-driven understanding with inclusive, sustainable development across Kenya. This session features Gerald Owino, strategic lead at the Grass Company, and Samantha Waki, who works to empower youth as active partners in shaping Africa's future. So please welcome Samantha and Gerald, and the floor is yours. Thank you for being here today.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I believe you can see me and you can hear me. As introduced, Gerald Owino of the Grass Company, but I'm here with Samantha. So Samantha can just quickly wave. And so here it is. So if you have any questions, any probably even difficult questions, please put them on the chat. Samantha will attend to the difficult ones. I'll just take the light ones. All right. Okay. So thank you for this time. It's such an honor to be here. We're excited to be part of what you're doing. Very good introduction there on what's happening in Africa. So for the next couple of minutes, allow me to share with you our story. And in sharing our story, we want to be able to say, actually, we'll give you a few stories and then come back to a few takeouts. Allow us to share a few stories and some takeouts. And so as we begin, I want to look back at why we started this business as the Grass Company. Why did we start this business? And it would relate with a key thing around these positive futures for Africa. So why did we start this business? And for me, it goes to a very simple reason or observation, which is that when I look at decisions being made, even in the introduction, there's a lot of call for us to do things. The question is, are the youth part of it? When we are in boardrooms, when we are in academic institutions, when religious gatherings, when we are in governance, are the youth part of it? And as I remember, the youth were often a side dish. They were never the main menu. They were often the side dish. So the challenge for me was then to say, how do I participate in this? That to be able to have young people at the core, at the front, at the center, as the main dish. And so when we're talking about development, when we talk about innovation, we said we wanted to make sure that the this young continent, which is on average 19 years old, that would be present in those decision making, that they'll be part of that journey. Okay. And so I agree with this statement around young people are a resource and not just a matter of discourse. And so over the next few minutes, I want to share again some stories. And in sharing those stories, then we'll be able to see and glean how do we create positive futures for Africa, right? Great. And so I'll move to the first story. And the first story is about genes that finally fit. And I draw this from a major brand, a major gene manufacturer that was keen to make it sales, obviously. Now, the challenge was that while they made genes, they did not make genes that fitted everyone, literally. And so we had some young girls from the townships in South Africa who came and said, and we had the opportunity to gather them and challenge the status quo. So they gave us feedback and said, you know what, we are a bit frustrated with the kind of pair of jeans that are sold in this space. And they said that the jeans that they find in the shop cannot fit them, cannot fit their body shape. And because this company was listening, they said, you know what, we can do something about it. So they designed another pair of jeans. Let's call it a roomier jean. So they designed another pair of jeans that was now one that fitted the African body, the African shape. And it was launched. It was launched not only in South Africa and Kenya, but it was also exported to the US. And for me, that is incredible because it tells me that if we are to be relevant, if we are to be to do something interesting or impactful, then we want to be able to listen and design based on what we hear. So the first observation I'll make is that even the biggest brands can miss it. Even the biggest brands, the biggest governments, the best governments can miss it. But it was important that those who want to get it would pause, look and understand. And for us, this has been our experience that over the years, we've had organizations that have taken time to pause, that have taken time to look to understand what's going on with this generation. And for us, these are not just logos. These are opportunities we've had where we've been trusted, where we've been able to learn and impact society. Now, I'm going to pick a few of these examples for the purposes of explaining how have some of these brands created something positive in the landscape. And the first example I'll pick, which is my second story, is about innovation while in transit. So many of you will know that public transport in Kenya is largely dominated by matatus. And as you can see, the very dynamic picture of our matatus. Now, 70% of that is matatus. And my story in this relates to a young man that I met. And he was sharing with me how much time it takes in transit. It was a longer conversation, but at the end of it, we ended up talking about how long it takes him to get where he's going to and out. And so he mentioned that he would take even 14 hours a week in transit. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I said, let's talk to other young people. Let's get to know how much time are they really spending in transit every week. And again, the information came back and said they're spending anything from 14 to 18 hours a week in transit. And we said, that's excellent. There's an opportunity there, but we want to be able to take advantage of that downtime, as I called it. And so we spoke to some of our clients, and we went to our key client, Safaricom, and we shared with them the proposition around putting Wi-Fi in transit. And shortly we moved from the conversation and we put Wi-Fi in 20 matatus. And then we moved on to putting Wi-Fi in 200 matatus. And then we moved on to put it in 2,000 matatus. And this story for me is very close to me because it was also about listening and designing. That Safaricom was quick to listen and say, okay, if this is what's going on, then I want to be part of creating a solution for it. And so this became a bigger thing than I could imagine. But the bottom line is it came from young people. So if we're going to look at innovation, we must know that this can happen when we meet the youth where they are. We can co-create ideas, and these ideas come from everyday activities, where they're living, where they're working, where they're playing. We can innovate in those spaces. Transit is a very simple and accessible activity. And so if we're going to create better futures, then we can tap into everyday moments. And right in there, when we innovate, then we're on the right path. Let me share another case study, another story. And this story would be around when culture has its own voice. And this story takes me back to northern Kenya. And we had a client who was keen on executing or promoting male circumcision for the purposes of handling matters HIV/AIDS. And the story goes this way. So we are sitting with this client and we say, before we do this big thing that you want to do, where there's a lot of money being spent above the line, media and on TV, radio. But before we do that, let's just take a minute. Let's go on the ground. Can we find out what are young people thinking about the very thing you want to do? And so I recall this scenario where one of the young guys, one of our informants, who happens to be a driver for a big NGO, was taking some of his employers to the ground to do some real research. And while they did the research, he went about to the nearby kiosk where he was going to have a soda. And as he was at the kiosk, he met a few young men. And they started talking about this campaign, or the possibility of saying, if we came about your community and promoted male circumcision, how would it affect you? And he got very strong feedback. And the feedback was based on the fact that they said that if I get circumcised, that means I'm betraying my community. I'll be a sellout for my community. And they were very strong about that. But they went even further and said, beyond being a sellout, that I will not be able to get married because, again, I'm seen as a sellout. And so that was a very strong perspective, which allowed us to come back in and tell the client, let's do more work. Before we go out and do a top-down engagement with these young people, can we understand the culture a bit more? Can we see the angles and the strategies we can employ to actually push this message so that they have a choice? And so we did that, and it worked very well. But again, it was about just respecting the cultures that are there and not taking it for granted. So that's the other story I'll say. Maybe that's the third story I'll give. Allow me to then share this, that when it comes to research data, that it means little without lived experiences. But for us, it is important to know what is happening, yes, but it's also important to know how it is happening. That is very key for us. If we are to do meaningful work, how is it happening on the ground? And so for us, our strategy includes having a network of information curators. We call them grasses. You can call them informants or spies, but they are essentially early adopters. They're in the communities, but they're able to tell us what their peers and friends are doing, thinking, feeling. And so for us, that's one strategy we employ. If we are going to be able to make just better futures for this generation, then we must be able to speak from their context. Okay. Now, when we have this network of grasses, we do get insights, but we also get trends. So trends are important. And allow me to share one trend, just to give context on what we're doing. So one trend is neighborhoodism, and you would be familiar with this because you've seen this. But neighborhoodism is, and I'll read what that says, where consumers continue to choose local products and brands with origins closer to home. Now, over time, what we've seen is consumers, or these young Africans, are choosing the continent. They're choosing their country. They're choosing their cities or towns where they're from, but they're also choosing their neighborhoods. And there's a lot of pride within that. And so what we do with these trends is allow our partners to come in and leverage from these trends with a view to have more relevant and more connection with the campaigns they're doing. Let me give one example, which brings me to my fourth story. And this story is about gamification and how it works in informal segments. And we have our experience in this. And in this story, we talk about Warner Brothers. And you can imagine with me, where you're bringing technology and gaming and neighborhoodism all in together. And so we have Warner Brothers and the HIV-free generation, and they are building Africa's first video game with behavior change messaging in it. And so we were excited to be part of this, and we shared key insights that would help them create scripts that are relevant. And so when we look at this game, was called Pamoja Mtaani, which means together in the hood. And one key thing I was really excited about it is because it was contextualized for this audience. Again, I say from the script to the visualization. But this was also delivered in the same neighborhoods. And so if you look at the bottom right screen, the neighborhood was very real for them. So I remember one session when a young guy had come in to play this game, and when he got out from the game, he said, "Hey, just guide me and tell me where are the condoms. I want to find out where the condoms." But he played the game, and he felt moved by what he had engaged with, and so that was exciting. But again, it was really all in their context. Let me go and share with you my last story. And the story is about transforming the solar landscape. And in this particular case, this was a Unilever supported initiative, a Transform project initiative. We have other partners like Bopink in part of this. But the brief to us was, can we understand the rural farm? What do they need for energy? And so we said, we'll spend time listening. That's what we did. We met up with the women, we hung out with them to listen to really what's going on the ground. Now, this allowed us to develop, along with our partners, a low-tech, affordable solar kit. But I found this very interesting because this solar kit had to fit the needs of this women. So I'll give you an example. One of these women, so you have a solar kit, you have the panel, but you had long cables, and the long cables were because she had to get lighting in her kitchen. So she was able to get an extension to her kitchen, but she was able to also get an extension to the cow shed because she's going to milk her cows very early in the morning, so she needed light. But another long cable went into her house where her daughter was doing homework. And so, again, very simple, but transformational. The key thing was we needed to listen and then design based on what the consumer or the final user was doing. Now, whether I talk about youth, whether I talk about transit, whether I talk about gamification or culture, for me, the main thing that I see is context or contextualization. And there's one statement or quote that came from a leading communicator that I found very profound over the years. And here it is, and I read it, that for the first time, the consumer is boss, which is fascinating, frightening, scary, and terrifying, because everything we used to know, everything we used to do will no longer work. And that pose for effect. When I look at this quote, it reminds me of saying, if this is Africa's population, massively influential group of people, it makes me read this and say, for the first time, the youth is boss. And therefore, everything we used to know, everything we used to do will no longer work. It calls for the second thing I want to propose as a key takeout. Actually, the first key thing I want as a key takeout, that we must then collaborate with this generation. We cannot dictate what we want. We must collaborate. So my call to government, my call to institutions, academic institutions and others is absolutely collaborate. Now, how have we collaborated? How does one collaborate? And for us, it's three simple ways where we want to get insights concerning this generation, get an understanding of what's happening on the ground. Secondly, is to innovate based on those insights, where we have the user of the innovation with us, and we're able to innovate with them. So with a good insights and a good innovation, we then take this solution to the ground. And we have young people engaging other young people concerning the very thing we innovated, right? Now, as we come to the close here, I want to just share the first takeout was around collaboration. The second takeout is concerning having an early warning system. But if you're going to engage this generation, you want to think ahead. And for us, it is about having the right network of people who give you insight and who you can observe and obtain trends. With what we see happening in Africa today for us is not a surprise. Whether you call it East Africa, Madagascar, around government, it's not a surprise because we could see the agitation. With what we see happening in the academic space, it's not a surprise. But nonetheless, if we are going to operate in this space, then we want to have an early warning system. We want to know what's going to happen before it happens. A third observation or takeout I would like to suggest is around identifying who the young people really are. And for me, young people are not one group. They're not homogeneous. So if we're going to create a movement, if you're going to create energy, or if you're going to have them respond to what we're doing, we then must identify which group are we speaking to. Identify and prioritize which group of young people are you talking to. Which group of young people are you talking to with your campaigns, with your objectives? Who are we talking to so that we have the right, we can tap into the right motivation. We can tap into the right values of the right group of people. Gone are the days when we could dictate. Gone are the days when we could generalize with this generation, okay? And to do that again, let's listen and design for the particular group of people or of youth that we want to speak to. The last takeout I will share based on our experience working with young people over the past 20 years is going back to the iceberg principle and going back to the amazing movie, The Titanic, which I recommend we watch it again. And within that, there's the understanding that, I mean, if you look at the movie, or remember the movie Titanic, that the captain made a decision based on a small portion of ice that he saw. And as then this generation, that we are making decisions about the next generation based on small portions of behavior that we are seeing, what we think is visible. Allow me to suggest that we want to then make decisions based on not only behavior, but tap into belief systems, tap into their thoughts, tap into their emotions, because all this then influence the behavior that we finally see. So anytime we see the riots, we are not making decisions about riots, but we are making decisions based on what is the hidden drivers that are out there. Ladies and gentlemen, if I close, I'd say this concerning creating positive futures for Africa. And I'll say that the Titanic that is our education system, or our governance systems, agriculture or finance systems, may look unsinkable, but that they will hit an iceberg, especially where they're not rooted on youth belief systems. So we will get it wrong if we are not looking to tap into young people and where they are. As I close, I'll say that we want to take time to listen to this generation. We want to take time to build with them. And by doing so, then we have solutions that are relevant, solutions that are exciting, solutions that are transformative, and also a reflection of this generation, right? And so, just the same way we started this meeting, I said, I'll share with you some stories and some takeouts, but all of them are about saying, let's build with them. Let's make sure that they are the menu and not the side dish. And with that, I'll bring it to a close. And Samantha, would you have any comments, one comment or questions that you want to bring up?
Thank you so much. I think the only comment that I would like to bring up is there's a shift happening globally, and this shift is especially with the Gen Zs, but also with now the Gen Alpha. And what is happening is these youth are bypassing us and are finding ways to interact with each other, communicate with each other, and build momentum. And so some of the things we're observing in Africa will begin to show up in other contexts just because of the increased level of connectivity. And so I think it's for everyone's benefit to be able to understand what's going on with young people, to be able to speak their language, and to be able to design with them in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's that from us. We hand it back to the team. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Gerald, Samantha, thank you very much for this very interesting and important insights from your work. And I really liked how you highlighted the importance of listening, because in Western debates, we often have the idea that we have to develop solutions, so to say, or that there are final solutions that we can adopt to certain problems. But what you have showed in a very interesting and very nice way is that solutions are already there, because people are facing problems within their life worlds and they want to find solutions. And what we have to do is to listen to that people, to find and to promote solutions that are fitting for everyone. So your work is really fitting perfectly in the framework of the Jena Declaration. So thank you very much for this important and interesting insights.